If you watched my video for number 23, the no line reference question, you saw me use the chronology rule to help me figure out where to read. And it really did help us kind of narrow our focus, just focus on the right lines, and not have to read the entire passage. Now, I kind of am always aware of my surroundings on the SAT, kind of what questions are coming up and everything like that, because I want to use the reading strategies as best I can. And a lot of them require us to kind of think ahead. I said this also in the last video for number 24 and 25. And so here again, thinking ahead might help us and nudge us in the right direction. The first thing I noticed about this evidence pair is that it seems like it's going to be confusing because you've got very long choices for 26. And then in 27, the line references are kind of all over the place, right? We got some at the beginning of the passage and then some at kind of the middle to the end. And that's unusual, right? I mean, usually we're still supposed to be going in order. We're supposed to use the chronology rule to kind of know where to look for the answers. And so that still applies to these evidence pairs. So looking bigger picture, I'd look at numbers 25 and 28 and think, well, where am I supposed to look for this answer? Where does the chronology rule suggest that it's going to be? Well, for number 25, remember we found that the answer was B. The trouble with this is that if we were wrong, we would have a different perspective on where to look. So that's a little frustrating, and it might help, make our kind of targeted lines a little bigger or smaller. But the next one is not really ambiguous at all, right? Line 80 for question 28 tells me that the answer to number 27 is likely between, in this case, 28 and 80. And so with that in mind, it really makes a clear mark between these kinds of choices. Now look, sometimes the chronology rule gets broken, so I'm not going to just immediately cross out A and B. I still need to go through the question, but if I'm having trouble and I need to make a guess, I'm more likely to guess C and D because they're more likely to be right based on the rules of the test. So let's just keep that in mind, that this is kind of where we're looking based on the chronology rule. All right. But let's make sure we know what we're after right here. So which statement best expresses a relationship between organic farming and conventional farming that is presented in the passage? Well, they talk about both a lot. We've seen that before in some of the other questions we've done, so there's going to be a lot of this. So we want a relationship between them. So let's look at 13 to 14. What does it say? All at the top here. 13 to 14. Conventional industrial agriculture has become incredibly efficient on a simple land-to-food basis. Well, that doesn't seem to be talking about organic farming at all, so that does not seem good to me. 22 to 26. Let's look at that. That is here. B. And since a third of the planet is already used for agriculture, destroying forests and other wild habitats along the way, anything that could help us produce more food on less land would seem to be good for the environment. Well, that doesn't seem to be talking about either type. But if we do go back a little bit, we saw, we had to read this for another question, they are talking about conventional farming. So again, they're not really talking about both. We want a relationship. So this seems to confirm what we originally thought, that these two choices are not going to be right. They don't fit with the chronology rule, and they don't provide the right information. Let's see if 51 to 53 is any better. That's right here. They found that organic farming delivered a lower yield for every crop type, though the disparity varied widely. Okay. When we talk about a relationship between two things, we're looking for them to make some sort of comparison, right? So they don't use the phrase conventional agriculture anywhere in these lines, but we can tell that organic farming is being compared to something else, right? It has a lower yield than something else. Now, for now, I might not even care what that something else is. I might just be like, okay, good enough. It seems to have a relationship. That part of the question matches. Let's see how D does. 61 and 65. That's right here. Conventional agriculture makes use of 171 million metric tons of synthetic fertilizer each year, and all that nitrogen enables much faster plant growth than the slower release of nitrogen from the compost or cover crops used in organic farming. So this one does mention both. So that's a little bit better, but it also has comparison words, right? Faster, slower, those words seem to matter. So both of those choices are in the mix for me at this point, and that's okay. I don't need to get down to one line reference with these questions. It's fine to just get rid of the garbage and then we'll sort through the rest as we do the next part, which is looking at 26 and looking at these answer choices. So what's the relationship? Both are equally sustainable, but they differ dramatically in the amount of land they require to produce equivalent yield. So yield, I remember reading about that, but I don't remember anything being equal between them, right? They're making a comparison saying that these two things are different, not that they're equal. So that word bothers me. Let's keep going. Both rely on artificial chemicals for pest control, but organic farmers use the chemicals sparingly in conjunction with natural remedies. That just doesn't seem to come up, right? I mean, they talk about fertilizers, but I don't remember them talking about like how much the fertilizers get used. Yeah, this is getting into something that's just not natural remedies, using them sparingly. I also think the whole point of organic farming is that they're not using artificial chemicals, but it doesn't matter. I don't care. It's not mentioned in the line, so I'm not going to dive that deep. C, both use nitrogen, so that was mentioned, to encourage plant growth, but the nitrogen used in conventional farming comes from synthetic sources. So here, look, we've got conventional agriculture makes sort of synthetic fertilizer and all that nitrogen, right? So synthetic nitrogen seems to match. That seems pretty good. Let's look at D. Both create a substantial amount of nitrogen runoff, but only the type of nitrogen found in fertilizers used in conventional farming can be dangerous. Well, they're talking about the nitrogen being faster or slower in terms of its release, but I actually don't see anything about danger here. So these are good examples of things that you might know from your own, environmental science class, biology class, or even other parts of this passage, but they're not in these lines. So this whole thing about it being dangerous, it's just not mentioned. And so C matches with line reference D. They both talk about nitrogen, and the comparison is that they make in the line, the most obvious comparison is whether it's a fast or slow release, but that's not even the comparison that comes up in the choice. Instead, the comparison that they use is it's synthetic versus not synthetic. So the synthetic piece is there, and then the nitrogen from the compost or cover crops used in organic farming, so that's coming from other more natural things. Compost is natural. So it's not the most obvious comparison, but I notice it because it's in the choice, and the choice tells me what to care about in the line. So that's why we don't waste our time making like long, elaborate summaries of everything, because we don't necessarily know what's important, right? We don't have to guess what's important. The choices are going to tell us what's important in the lines, so we're going to use the answer choices much more than our own instincts about what matters. And sure enough, there's no doubt here between the chronology rule and finding these right words and thinking about comparisons. This double is not hard at all. We'd be pretty confident in these answers.